time to sink our teeth to the truly amazing final battles. Starting off, we have the final boss of my favorite Crash game, Warped. And as to be expected, the final boss is none other than Neo Cortex himself. And this masked guy. This battle is fairly simple, but it's the fun factor in this fight why I like it so much. Throughout the fight, Cortex is trying to get you with his laser gun, a bit like in the final battle of the first game. Then he goes all ripperoo on you and tries to blow you into smithereens with mines. But because Cortex is an idiot, he drops his shield at this point, giving you an opening to attack him. After he's down, you need to knock him down to the pipe in the middle of the room. Do this 3 times and Cortex is defeated. Now with all that, you'd think this battle is highly repetitive, right? Well, it's true that Cortex doesn't change his pattern all that much, but you'd be an idiot not to notice these two on the background. Through the fight, Aku Aku and Uka Uka are fighting against each other on the background, and they're creating disturbances that can easily kill you. In the first phase, they shoot lasers at each other. In the second, they start cartoon-style fisticuffs. And finally, they get together to form an explosion. What I found hilarious about this is that these two can actually kill you more effectively than Cortex can.
Aku Aku, couldn't you just take the fight with your brother somewhere else? I mean, yeah, it makes the fights more challenging, but you're kinda hindering my progress.
But besides that, Crash 3's finale is still nothing to sneeze at. It's quite simply everything I could ask in a final battle. It's only number 7. Joy. You thought the final battle of Crash 3 was the best classic PS1 final boss? Well, you better think again, because Ripto from Spyro 2 is here to rip that statement to shreds. I don't know how, but this fight manages to take everything I loved about the Cortex and Uka Uka battle and make it so much better. The fight begins when Spyro enters Ripto's arena and finds Ripto! There, Spyro finds out that Ripto has found a power crystal and suggests that Ripto tests out its power on him because Ripto was too much of an idiot to think that himself. You know, I'm starting to see a pattern here. The fight begins as Zoe tells you that Elora and Hunter are trying to help you to fight Ripto. Here's where the all orbs you collected come to play. With Professor's modifications, the orbs now have the power to give Spyro new abilities. So in the first phase of the fight, you try to collect the orbs before Ripto does, giving Spyro new powers depending on the color. After you've powered up, you can deal damage to Ripto. The second phase is pretty much the same, except this time, Ripto has help from a mechanical version of Gulp, who has stronger and longer reaching attacks, and he can reach the orbs much faster now. However, if you're able to avoid his attacks, get enough orbs, and make every attack count, you shouldn't have too much problems with this phase either. Plus, there are many sheep on the battlefield in case you're low on sparks. After you destroy the robot Gulp, begins what is easily my favorite part of this fight. Both Ripto and Spyro rise up into the air for one last aerial battle, and it is glorious! You need to shoot down Ripto and his bird and avoid his attacks. Not just that, but you're flying over a lava pool. A freaking lava pool! And after you defeat Ripto, he will get fried in the said lava pool, ending Spyro 2. Just everything about this fight just screams awesome. The setting, the gameplay, the atmosphere, the music, and to think we're not even in the top 5 yet! Okay, I don't care what anyone says, I love the final battle of Jak 2. Metal Core is simply put, one of the most satisfying final bosses I've ever faced. Why? Well, if you're familiar with this game, you'd know that it is merciless. There are so many missions in this game that kick the player's ass in so many ways imaginable, and the final boss is no exception. The fight starts when Jak and Daxter enter the Metalhead nest after blowing it up wide open. There they find out some cold hard facts. Afterwards, Metalcore shoots Jak, crumbling his platform, but he survives because Dark Jak, and the battle begins. The fight itself is pretty straightforward. You have to shoot Metalcore in the middle of the nest for him to take damage. The hard part comes from the million and thousand enemies swarming at you. In the first phase, Core sends those annoying scorpion enemies after you. Sure, they deal only 1 HP of damage and they die in one hit, and you can destroy their eggs before they hatch. But when they swarm... In the second phase, in addition to the annoying scorpions, he sends these flying golems after you. And they're harder to hit than the scorpions, and they deal 2 HP damage. This is easily the hardest part of the fight. Best tactic is probably to avoid all the attacks and deal as much as damage to Core as you can. If you manage to get his health down to a third, the final phase begins. And honestly, this is my favorite part of the fight. In this phase, you need to shoot at Metalcore while running away from him and avoiding his beam attacks. This phase is also pretty hard, but I feel it's actually one of those times in the game where the difficulty actually felt fair. In the final phase, it really feels like when you screw up, it's your own fault rather than some random enemy you didn't see coming. Not to mention, it feels so satisfying to finally land the final blow on this guy. Every tribulation and every painful experience is over now. And you got his head to show for it. Basically, this boss illustrates just how satisfying beating a hard game like Jak 2 can be. And that's all I need from it. Also, the music. Hell to the yes! At number 4, we have the final battle of Gen 4 against the Sinnoh champion Cynthia. I went with the version from Pokemon Platinum here, but you know, it's not that different from the one in Diamond and Pearl. After beating Elite 4, you are greeted with Cynthia as the champion and your final opponent. Her team consists of Spiritomb, Lucario, Roserade, Togekiss, Gastrodon in Diamond and Pearl, Milotic, and easily the biggest threat in this battle, Garchomp. All of Cynthia's Pokemon are top leveled and they all have attacks that can hit really hard. I mean, you shouldn't have too much problems with Roserade and Togekiss. Lucario has a nasty Aura Sphere, Spiritomb doesn't have any weaknesses, and her Dark Pulse can really hurt. And Milotic has both Counter and Mirror Coat, so good luck. But everything I just said is nothing compared to the horror that is her Garchomp. With moves like Dragon Rush, Earthquake, Flamethrower / Brick Break, and Giga Impact, this dragon can rack up damage faster than you can say, "Oh no." This is why many players have an Ice type on their team, or at least an Ice type move, because of this fucking dragon! But the main reason why I love this battle is because of the thrill it gives me. When I first played Gen 4, it took me multiple tries to even take down her first Pokemon. Plus, she was the first champion I ever faced, so she set a certain standard for the other champions I would face in the future. A standard Gen 5 and 6 clearly forgot. Cynthia is a final battle that is challenging from all the right reasons. This battle truly makes me feel that I'm facing the strongest trainer in Sinnoh. And that's why it's my favorite final battle in the Pokemon series. And the music is, once again, freaking awesome. think I speak for everyone when I say that final bosses that are long and complete are freaking awesome. And such is the case with the final battle of Okami, the Emperor of Everlasting Darkness, Yami. I know practically everyone who have made this kind of list have talked about Yami, but I'm going to be blunt. I agree with everything they've said about this boss. The battle starts as Yami strips away Amaterasu's brush powers, Yami revealing his true form, firing his laser, and Waka sacrificing himself to save Ami. After this, she lets out a howl and starts to fight back. As you're chipping away Yami's health, you slowly start to get your brush powers back and more ways to deal damage to him. Yami has 4 forms: a giant ball on fire, a giant slot machine, and electric squid arm thing. All of his forms have a different gimmick to them that you need to work around in order to damage his weak spot. And just when it seems it's over, and Ami lets out a victory howl, Yami is still fighting back and takes Ami's brush powers again. Except this time, he doesn't just resort to just stealing them, he destroys them. After that, he leaves Amaterasu for dead, proceeds to succumb the entire Nippon into complete darkness, and all is lost, right?
You should know by now that's not how fiction works.
Your partner Isun hasn't just been slacking around back on Earth, but instead he has restored people's faith to the sun god Amaterasu with his paintings. A few thousand prayers later, the brush gods and Ami are restored, and the sunlight shall be served! In the final phase, Yami takes the form of a hand and Ami becomes glorious. The phase is fairly simple. Use the sunlight to stun Yami and then attack him until his health is down and bring an end to Yami's darkness. This fight is a long one, but man does it deliver. Not only is it complete, but it also holds a ton of symbolism. All of Yami's forms represent mankind's evil desires like crushing, incinerating, gambling, and using electricity for evil deeds. His true and final form, on the other hand, represent how all evil starts out small and how all evil comes out of our own hands. Also, the music through the entire fight is amazing. The Yami's theme sounds very threatening and it just fits well for the Emperor of Darkness. And I feel it's one of the most overlooked tracks in the game. The second theme, Rising Sun, on the other hand, is so good it's not even funny, and it's one of my personal favorite boss themes ever. What else can be said? The fight with Yami is amazing in every aspect, and it's without question the perfect way to end off a masterpiece like Okami. Praise thy metallic owl! The fight with Clockwork from the original Sly Raccoon is simply mind-boggling. It manages to be everything I love in a good final boss battle and surpass those criterias with flying colors. The battle starts with Sly getting the hold of Carmelita's jetpack. Then Clockwork shows up, gives some epic dialogue, and the fight begins. Now, the vehicle sections in Sly 1 are not the most stellar of things the game has to offer, and most of the time they tend to be more of a chore rather than an enjoyment. The jetpack, however, is a complete exception to all of this, as it controls really well and it's a freaking jetpack! As the fight starts, you can't damage Clockwork normally because of his armor. Instead, you need to dodge his attacks and wait for Carmelita to create holes into his armor with her shock pistol. After the hole has been created, you need to shoot the electrocuted part of Clockwork's body. Repeat this few times and he goes down. But, as to be expected...
Wow, that's is one tough owl.
Yup, he's still kicking, and so, after some more epic dialogue, the second phase begins. This is more or less the same thing as the first one, but this time, Clockwork attacks you with electric rings that you need to fly through in order to avoid damage. But the tactic of beating him is still pretty much the same, and after a few hits, he goes down again. And then, it's time for the final stretch. Clockwork is still kicking, and you need to finish him off before he reconstructs himself. You have to make the final run on the Clockwork's body using the wreckage in the lava and the platforming skills you've learned until this point. When you finally reach him, you get to smash his head off with your cane. So satisfying! As you beat Clockwork, he says that Sly will never be rid of him and that he will always be superior. And seeing how the sequel turned out, he'd be right! Everything about this fight just works. All the way from the dialogue to the mechanics and the music, which, by the way, is my favorite boss theme of all time. What can I say? Clockwork is easily one of the best villains in any video game, and this fight is even a further proof of that. Alright, we're closing in on the final of finals. Before that, let's recap. Number 15, Jargingha. 14, Dragon Warlock of Doom. Number 13, Hades. Number 12, Ganondorf. Number 11, Absolute Domination indeed. Number 10, not too bad of a random final boss. Number 9, Stephen Merchant. Number 8, Kessler. Number 7, oh thanks Aku Aku! Number 6, Ripto's Rage. Number 5, Metal Core. Number 4, Champion Cynthia. Number 3, The Ball Spawn. And number 2, Clockwork. I really don't care what I might get for this, but anyway, my favorite final battle of all time is the boss fight against Alistair Azimuth in Ratchet & Clank: A Crack in Time. This boss. This freaking boss! Where do I even start? Well, might as well start from the beginning. After you've defeated Nefarious and destroyed his space station, you flee with Azimuth back to the Great Clock. After Clank tells about his role in the clock, Ratchet and Clank say their goodbyes, leaving Azimuth being bitter and angry about not using the clock to save Lombexes and... Wait, what are you doing, Alistair? Azimuth? Stop! So, that just happened. After this, you need to raise Azimuth to the clock before he can reach the Orvis chamber. Except it's not really a race thanks to Sigmund holding him off, and you always win anyway thanks to cutscene power to the max. When Clank reaches the Orvis chamber, he uses the clock to travel 6 minutes back in time to save Ratchet's life. Next, you need to chase Azimuth on grind rails while dodging the bombs he's throwing at you. Eventually, you reach the Orvis chamber and the final battle truly begins. The reason I love this fight isn't because it's challenging, in fact, it's pretty easy. I love this fight because of everything else! There's just so much action going on that your mind just might blow a little from everything. Azimuth has initiated the time shift, which is eventually causing a rift between time and space. And Azimuth himself is attacking you with electric projectiles and speeding around the chamber, while you are using the most ridiculous weaponry to defeat not just your final opponent, but the only other person left from your kind. The main reason I love this fight though, is the atmosphere and the multitude of ways you can use to defeat Alistair. He has no set pattern and it really feels like you're fighting your equal. Kinda like another Lombax! But really, this fight gives me a mixed bag of emotions. I feel happy to get this epic journey finished. I feel sad because of Azimuth's fate. I feel satisfied because of this awesome fight and the great ending. And I feel angry because we couldn't do anything to stop Azimuth from doing all of this. This game is truly amazing. And the final boss of this game is what I feel to be its magnum opus for the amazing atmosphere and music and the multiple fun ways of defeating him. There's no question in my mind, despite how much I love the fights with Yami, Ripto, and Clockwork, that this is not only my favorite final boss of all time, but also my favorite boss in this series.
I'm Finished Duck, and even though A Crack in Time is just barely not my favorite RNC game, I cannot deny that it's one of the most amazing games of the last generation. Well, I see you all next time. Take care.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!